In 2010, a company with 9,000 stores, 60,000 employees, and $6 billion in annual revenue ceased to exist. Not because of bad luck, not because the technology changed too fast, not because Netflix was smarter, because of a $40 late fee. This is the real story of Blockbuster, and it is not the story you think you know. In 1985, a man named David Cook opened the first Blockbuster video store in Dallas, Texas. The concept was simple but revolutionary. A massive, brightly lit video rental store with thousands of titles under one roof, organized by genre, staffed by people who actually knew movies. At a time when most video rental shops were small, poorly lit, and poorly stocked, walking into Blockbuster felt like walking into the future. The growth was unlike anything the entertainment industry had ever seen. Within 3 years, Blockbuster had over 400 locations. Within 5, it was opening a new store somewhere in America every 17 hours. By the early 1990s, Blockbuster was a cultural institution. Friday night in America meant one thing. You drove to Blockbuster, walked the aisles, argued with your family about what to watch, and hoped your favorite movie wasn't already checked out. At its peak, Blockbuster operated over 9,000 stores worldwide, employed 60,000 people, and generated nearly $6 billion in revenue annually. It was, by every measurable standard, an empire. But empires have a way of becoming blind to the things that will eventually destroy them. And Blockbuster had a secret. A dark, deeply uncomfortable secret that sat at the very heart of its business model. One that its executives knew about, defended, and refused to change even as customers grew angrier by the year. Late fees. It sounds small. It doesn't sound like the thing that topples a global empire. But follow the math and the psychology, and you begin to understand just how deeply this single practice rotted Blockbuster from the inside. At its peak, Blockbuster was collecting approximately $800 million per year in late fees alone, roughly 14% of its total annual revenue. That number is not a side detail, it is the entire story. Because Blockbuster had built its financial model, its debt payments, its store leases, its expansion targets around the assumption that customers would always return movies late, and then it punished those same customers for doing exactly that. Every single person who ever walked into a Blockbuster and received an unexpected late fee felt something specific. Not just frustration, something closer to betrayal. They had trusted this store, brought their family there, spent money on a Friday night, and they were being penalized for it. That feeling, multiplied across millions of customers for over a decade, quietly built a reservoir of resentment that was waiting, just waiting for somewhere else to go. The somewhere else was already being built. In 1997, a software executive named Reed Hastings returned a VHS copy of Apollo 13 to his local Blockbuster. He was 6 weeks late. The late fee was $40. Standing at that counter, handing over $40 for a movie he had already watched and returned, Hastings felt something shift. Not just anger, a decision. Within a year, Hastings and his co-founder, Mark Randolph, launched Netflix, a DVD subscription service delivered by mail, with a promise so devastatingly simple that it cut straight to the wound Blockbuster had spent years inflicting on its own customers. No late fees, ever. But Netflix was not an overnight success. In its early years, it was a struggling, cash-burning company searching desperately for a model that worked. And in the year 2000, at the height of the dot-com collapse, Hastings and Randolph flew to Dallas with one last idea: They would offer Blockbuster a partnership. Netflix would run Blockbuster's entire online brand. Blockbuster would promote Netflix inside its stores. The asking price was $50 million. John Antioco, Blockbuster's CEO, found the proposal amusing. The meeting was brief. Netflix was dismissed as a niche service for tech enthusiasts, too small and too limited to ever threaten a company with 9,000 stores and $6 billion in annual revenue. Hastings and Randolph flew home without a deal. Netflix had 90 days of cash left and no backup plan. Netflix didn't collapse. It adapted. It refined its subscription model, built a recommendation algorithm that understood customer taste better than any video store employee ever could, and began quietly accumulating a customer base made up of people who were done being punished for returning movies a day late. By 2003, the threat from Netflix had become impossible for Blockbuster to ignore. To his credit, Antioco recognized the danger with startling clarity. In 2004, he launched Blockbuster Online with one critical advantage Netflix couldn't match. Customers could return their online rentals directly in Blockbuster stores and exchange them for free in-store rentals on the spot. It was a genuinely brilliant move. Netflix executives internally acknowledged that Blockbuster Online was the most serious competitive threat the company had ever faced. The war was real, and for the first time, Blockbuster was winning it. And then, someone inside Blockbuster made the decision that would end the company. His name was Carl Icahn, one of the most feared activist investors in American corporate history. He was not interested in long-term survival. He was interested in the next quarterly report. Eliminating late fees was costing Blockbuster an estimated $400 million per year in lost revenue. To Icahn, this was financial recklessness. He launched a brutal, public, sustained campaign to dismantle Antioco's leadership. He recruited board allies, fought proxy battles at shareholder meetings, and used every weapon available to publicly discredit the man who had come closest to actually saving Blockbuster. Under that relentless pressure, Blockbuster's board cracked. In 2005, the company reinstated fees, rebranding them as restocking fees, in a move so transparent it immediately became a national news story. Editorial pages mocked it. Customers flooded message boards with outrage. Late-night television made jokes about it. The goodwill Antioco had spent a year carefully rebuilding evaporated in a single news cycle. In 2007, Antioco was finally forced out. His replacement was a retail executive named Jim Keyes, who had no background in technology or digital media. In a 2008 interview that would become infamous in business school case studies around the world, Keyes stated publicly that he saw no meaningful competitive threat from either Netflix or Redbox. "I've been in the business long enough to know that this too shall pass," he said. It did not pass. That same year, Netflix was quietly transforming into something Blockbuster had absolutely no capacity to compete with. Streaming, not DVDs by mail, not physical stores, just content delivered instantly, directly into your television. Blockbuster, drowning in debt, had none of the resources to respond. The window that Antioco had tried to open had been slammed shut forever. The years between 2007 and 2010 were not a sudden collapse. They were something slower and more painful. Every quarter, trading traffic declined. Every quarter, more locations closed. The company that had been opening a new store every 17 hours was now shuttering locations faster than it could count them. In September 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy with nearly $1 billion in debt. Dish Network acquired its remains for $320 million. Over 9,000 stores closed. 60,000 people lost their jobs. Carl Icahn later admitted publicly that his investment in Blockbuster was one of the worst of his career. The admission came after the stores were already dark, after the employees were already gone, after the company was already dead. Words at that point cost nothing. Today, there is exactly one Blockbuster store left on Earth. It sits on a quiet commercial strip in Bend, Oregon, managed by a woman named Sandy Harding, who has worked there for over 2 decades. People travel from across the country to visit it. They drive hours, sometimes from other states. They walk the aisles slowly. Some of them cry. Not because they miss renting movies, but because walking into that store feels like stepping back into a version of Friday night that no streaming algorithm has ever been able to replicate. What they're mourning isn't Blockbuster. It's the texture of a world that moved more slowly. Every night, Sandy Harding locks the door, turns off the lights, and goes home. Tomorrow, it will open again. And the lesson sitting quietly inside that empty parking lot, the lesson every dominant company eventually forgets, is the same one Blockbuster learned too late. The customer's trust is not a resource you can borrow against indefinitely. When it runs out, they don't warn you, they don't complain, they simply walk out the door, and they don't come back.